World Financial Group offers entrepreneurs from all backgrounds the opportunity to start their own business on a level playing field. Dr. Yana Woodhouse, receiving the WCM Wall Street Pioneer Award by the United Black Wall Street of America, Inc., is one of those entrepreneurs.
I see WFG and TFA as a place where African Americans with an entrepreneurial mindset can flourish. And the bonus, we help families and serve the communities across the country.
To learn more about us, go to worldfinancialgroup.com.
We are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward-thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Hey, what's happening? Yo, what's up?
Good afternoon. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, the Art of War. And as my mother used to always tell me, Tony was not on my birth certificate, it was William A. Rogers. And I have a very interesting show today. Some very interesting individuals who have been a part of my life while I was at City College for some time. I was at one point the director of urban and governmental affairs at the City College of New York. And I only had to report to the president of the college, and I served actually 5 of them. And that allowed for me to run a lot of interference and do a number of things with the African and the Black and Brown communities in the college, even though my job was basically the political stuff on the outside of the college. But there was a lot of politics going on the inside too, which was helpful. There are 2 brothers that I'm very close to, haven't seen them in a while, but both just finished books. Kevin's latest book, Kevin Abdul Rahman, his latest book is The Eruption of the Possible. And I don't know whether you can see this. Okay, maybe that's the way. And he'll talk to you about this. And Kevin has a very interesting story. I admired this brother. And then we have a scientist, Dr. Jerry Charles Guyden. And he has a book about many of the good and bad things that happened to him as it relates to his pursuit of teaching young people how to become scientists. And these are some good brothers. They've helped a lot of young people. And I am very pleased to be able to have them on to talk about their books and some of our adventures at the City College of New York. So please welcome Dr. Jerry Guyden and Dr. Kevin Abdul Rahman. How are you doing, brothers?
Hey, how you doing, Tony?
I'm doing well.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
So, we have a lot of stories, even though names have been changed to protect the innocent. So
and the guilty.
And the guilty. And Kevin, it was interesting with Kevin because no matter how bad stuff was, we could find some way to make a joke out of it, which I think saved both of us, And Kevin and Jerry's brother from the South, like me, so we connect right away because we had some cultural same understanding how people used to treat folk, south of Washington. People used to do different things. We used to talk to each other a little bit more than they did in the city. So Jerry brought a lot of that Southern culture into an area that you don't see too many people that look like him in. And so I am pleased to have both of you here. Kevin, I'm going to start with you because your story is so amazing. Just give the listeners a brief outline of who you are and then about your latest book and what you're trying to accomplish with it.
Well, I was originally born Kevin Applegate before I converted to Islam, number one. But I grew up the first 14 years of my life in East Orange, New Jersey with my grandmother, and then was shipped to, and I say shipped, to Philadelphia to live with my mother. I'm like, my story is kind of like just almost all young kids from the so-called hood. I was an athlete. I was a Pop Warner football quarterback, a basketball player, and had the same dreams or whatever. However, en route to that pursuit of whatever it was going to be, the streets kind of interfered with that. And I started selling drugs around 14, 15 years old. I ended up going to the penitentiary when I was 22, I believe. 22. I spent 10 years in Greatest Fort Prison. And when I got out of Greatest Fort Prison, it was a really great transformation for me. For most people, prison would have been a horrible experience. But for me, it was probably the most important thing that happened to me and the most important experience I had in my life because it allowed, and what I talk about in the book, it allowed the caterpillar to become a butterfly. And I grew and matured. And when I came home, I went back to school. I got my master's degree from Lincoln University. I got my doctor's degree from Temple University. And I spent 23 and a half years as an athletic director or associate athletic director at the City College of New York, where I met these two gentlemen. And during my 23 and a half years of at City College, I kind of like to believe that I left my mark on that campus. And at the end of the 23 years, it was discovered that I was had been incarcerated. And although my incarceration had been 40 years prior to the college finding out, and some 20 years almost before I even started working at City College, I was forced into retirement soon as they discovered my background. And so this is what my second book, The Eruption of Possible, about, is that we have a hidden community in America of 20 million ex-felons. Now, keep in mind, it's 20 million ex-felons or more than 20 million, but it's only 2.2 million people incarcerated. So the gist of it is, a lot of these ex-felons, or most of these ex-felons, are in our society doing positive things and making contributions to the society. However, the only thing that is talked about is what they did and not who they became. So my book kind of covers the whole concept of this hidden community where no matter what a person would do and accomplish in their lives. I talk about a friend of mine who is the chairman of the board for the Jordan brand for the Nike Corporation, who was an ex-felon, who his first job interview, he revealed his past, and they rescinded in a letter of employment. So the point being is that no matter what you have done and who you have become and how high you have risen, as soon as your background has been discovered, they judge you based on what you did, and in my case, 47 years ago, and not who you've become. So the premise is, you never hear people talk about a butterfly and referring to it as a former caterpillar. Yet former ex-felons and former men and women who've been incarcerated are always referred to as what they did and not who they've become. So that's the gist of my book.
Well, I can tell you for a fact that as a human being, you're a person that I'm glad to have had and to still have the opportunity to know you, because you have. I saw what you did with young people, and I understand who you are, which even before I knew what you did,
Mhm.
I I became close to who you are, which is what I think you're saying and which is
Right,
true.
right.
And Dr. Jerry Guyden is a brother that I used to hear about Dr. Guyden doing this and doing this in the science. So I thought you was white. You know, 'cause I heard about all these awards that this guy was getting and all of this stuff he was, you know, teaching. I couldn't even pronounce the words of the course and all of that stuff. So I said, damn. And then I forgot who said, you got to meet Dr. Guyden. I said, okay. So when I went over and I said, oh man, this is a brother here doing all of this stuff. It was a pleasant surprise to me, because as I had said earlier, when you read his book and when you understand the awards and the stuff that this man has done, it's not. I guess it's unfortunate, that you would not see him as being black. It reminds me of a story that I told, and I don't think he can hear us, so I'm not sure. You can hear me. It may be his internet. I'm not sure why you can't hear, but we'll have to move on. We might have to do this for Dr. I mean, I just talked. Well, you see, there are different sciences. I didn't say he was a computer scientist. I would say he's in biology. But I hope.
See if he plays with his volume, whether it comes through or not.
Yeah, but it's hard for me to reach him to do that if he can't hear me. But let's go on, and I will try to text after you. You might have to talk a little bit more about some of your stuff while I try to get my brother. But Dr. Guyden is a very brilliant man. And he has a book out, A Perfect Science. This is, I think you can see it here. There you go. And all of these are his students, and all of the things that they have been able to achieve and to accomplish in science. So I'm going to try, Kevin, what I want you to do is to give a little understanding to the listeners of what you did I mean, you can't, I mean, you did so much, but a little bit of your experience at City College and some of the things that you were able to do while you were there. Then I'll try to see, can I get Gary?
Well, when I first went to City College in 1993, I was hired as City College had just built a brand new outdoor facility for soccer and lacrosse and track. and I was hired as the first director of that facility. And we ran track meets. We did all the outdoor varsity sports there. And that was my first job, and I started that. And what I found out from City College is that probably on all campuses or any group where there's a lot of in-house politics, that people lose sight of the most important reason why you're there, and that's the students. I figured that early, and my connect with the students kind of really grew. My background, I was a community organizer in Philadelphia. I ran a delinquency prevention sports program. Matter of fact, I started my own organization called Total Response in Philadelphia. So I understood the connection and the need to connect to the student population. And as matter of fact, I had conversations with one of our presidents several times, and the gist of the conversation, I used to say to him, I don't work for you, I work with you. Our boss are these students. And if you don't believe me, just let them start coming through that door and see how valuable we are. So I think that was the gist of it. And City College is just a place and very unique in that, and probably, my experience of not being from New York really kind of heightened. I think people from New York may even take for granted the multinational culture of New York. But coming from Philadelphia, where I came from, and in my time in the 60s, and in the early 70s and the 60s, every 4 blocks was a different gang. So your world basically was a 4-block radius. So your perception of the world was very limited. And you didn't have the mixture of cultures and things of like that in City College. In fact, my first week at City College, someone heard me mention, I was talking about somebody and I mentioned that they were Puerto Rican. And someone pulled me to the side and said, you can't assume that anybody of course they speak Spanish, they're Puerto Rican. You may insult a Dominican, you may insult somebody from El Salvador. And it was a rude awakening because growing up in Philadelphia, if you spoke Spanish, as far as we was concerned, you was Puerto Rican. We were not, I mean, outside of New York, the multicultural thing is not as prevalent as people probably from New York take for granted it is. So New York was a really rude awakening for me as far as the multicultural international flavor and being able to network cross culture with all the students. And go ahead.
You obviously did a great job because there are many young people who I still talk to have given you a lot of praise as far as helping them do what they need to do. I can see Jerry is back. Hopefully, can you hear us, Jerry?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I had to go off and come back. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you. And I was just talking to Kevin, and one of the things before I go to you, Jerry, because Kevin did give a little bit of background, and then we'll get into each one of you a little bit more. Congratulations, Kevin, because you're nominated for the Philadelphia
Black Basketball Hall of Fame.
Right. So that just came through. So I just want to congratulate you. Dr. Guyden, could you just give just a brief background of who you are and what your focus was at the City College of New York, of some of the things that you were able to achieve while you were there? We can't hear you. Check to see if is your phone on mute. Well, while he's checking that, I'll do some of the talking. Jerry is a brilliant brother. He received his PhD on the study of cancer. And he has been, over the years, the forerunner in getting Black doctors and scientists who have a certain type of understanding about life. Not just going through the process of getting an education, a PhD, and I'm smarter than you, but to be able to understand about the benefit of having a certain type of an education and being in a certain position to do that, and also what it would mean as relates to giving back to those who put shoulders that you stood on. I was at a event that the Great Harlem Chamber of Commerce gave during Earth Day at Columbia University, and the keynote speaker was a young lady, and I can't remember her name, but she was a doctor and a lawyer, and she is now an expert on the whole issue of the unjust attention that urban communities get based on climate change. And she talked about how she went to law school after she was helping people, as tenants, and she was a scientist, but she, decided to do law, and then she went into the environment. But what impressed me is that she said, and after all of this that I'm saying, if it wasn't for Dr. Jerry Guyden, I would have never been able to do what I was able to accomplish. And so, again, I wanted to have these two brothers, and I don't know what's happening with Jerry, because he can do such a much better job. I'm not doing him justice as it relates to all of the things, all of the awards, all of the accomplishments that he's been able to make in the area of science. The best thing I can say to you is pick up The Perfect Science, which is his book, and he too was a former Black quarterback. So, and I didn't know that, Kevin, until I was looking at the book. Now, Kevin is a golfer at some point. One of these days now.
I don't know if you would call it that.
Well, you've been talking about it for long enough. So by all of these years, you need to know how to at least do a couple of holes in one, I suppose. But tell us a little bit about your view of Jerry Guyden.
The main thing about Jerry, Jerry, when I first came to City College, Jerry, while I was waiting for you to come back from vacation, when they told me don't go out to the community until you talk to Tony Rogers.
Did somebody actually say that to you?
No, several people said it to me. Several people said it to me.
That don't go into the community that I came from.
Yeah, they told me
that just shows you how sad it was.
They said do not go, because the issue was they wanted the Harlem community to use the facility so that they could say that they were serving the community with this new venture, because you know what it took to build that field, and how much money they had to raise and whatever. So they wanted a very real connection with the Harlem community, but I wasn't allowed to approach anybody until you came back from vacation. But during that period, I met Jerry, and Jerry took me around. Jerry was living in Teaneck, New Jersey at that time. He took me around Teaneck, showed me Eddie Murphy's house, showed me where Dizzy Gillespie used to live, and blah, blah, blah. So right from the very beginning, Jerry opened up his heart to me. And I never forgot that. And we used to have this little staff basketball every Thursday afternoon. And it became more about our our getting together and being a brotherhood than it was about playing basketball. You know what I mean? And I just from that, I used to go to his labs and you could just see. In fact, I tell you what the first thing Jerry showed me would really mess my head up. He had these two little black mice in this little cage, right? And he told me these two black mice have identical DNA. And he said, and we've been cloning these mice for the past 50 years. And so I said, what? Then he explained to me, you can't have a scientific project if you're going to have different variables. So cloning a live creature was 50 years old, more than 50 years old in 1993. And I was amazed. So every time he would pull these mice out to do this experiment, I would say black mouse walking because they had to kill the mouse to get the DNA out of them. But I thought, go ahead.
Jerry, can you hear us now? Because I saw you smiling. So
I can hear you.
We can hear you.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
we can hear you. We were just talking about you since you were having some technical problems. Kevin and I was just giving some of our thoughts about how you. I don't. As I was saying before, I used to think I didn't know that you were black. I was reading all of these reports and all of this stuff. All of these tests and all of this stuff that this guy was doing, and with black people, the only time that someone is black if their last name is Washington, because most white people don't like to use Washington as their last name. They change it around, even though he was the father of the country, but he was also the father of a lot of people. So they didn't want to. They did not want to have that association. Nevertheless, that is what I always understood about City College, is that the work, no matter who you were at City College, still is, I'm sure, is really I think one of the most interesting public schools in engineering and in the sciences and the like. But Jerry, can you hear us and give us a little bit more information about you and your experiences there? And I think we still can't hear you, so there's some challenges.
It just was on.
Yeah. I don't know. It may be his internet or a connection, but we can't hear. Kevin, when you how did we meet? I don't quite remember how
I had to make an appointment. You were still on vacation, and I went to your office and made an appointment to meet you as soon as you got back. So as soon as you got back, that was one of your first agenda items to meet the new director of the field. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't know if you remember this. You took me and you drove me around Harlem and showed me all parts of Harlem. And you took me, I believe it was Strivers Row, right? Mm-hmm. And what amazed me, and I don't know if I shared this with you, but I was mesmerized by the idea, because you said we went down a block. Some of the brownstones were actually boarded up. You know what I mean? It looked like the regular old hood to me. But you was telling me that this house, Bob Dylan owns this house, and so-and-so owns this house. And it was the first time that I ever, matter of fact, the only time I ever experienced the haves and the have-nots living together. I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember taking me down Strivers Row?
No, but I know that I tried to make sure that people who came in had a understanding of it. But I remember a lot of the things that we did together, and all of the different types of.
Now to you, and most people from Harlem or whatever, and I don't know if this is true in the rest of New York, because I'm only talking about Harlem right now. But it is the only place I know, not being from New York, that the haves and the have-nots live together. Because I remember specifically you telling me that was Bob Dylan's house.
Yeah.
You pointed to, right? Across the street, boarded up, then it was and everything, houses and whatever. So, and it was like, I've never seen the haves and the have-nots live together before. And that always stuck in my mind why I never could answer the question why we all can't live together.
Well, it's interesting. And it's more so now than it was in the past.
Right.
Jerry, are you back? Can you hear us?
Yeah. Why don't I talk while we can? You hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, why don't you?
He just went out again.
Okay. Soon as you come back in, you can start to talk. We'll keep it going like at the Apollo Theater, until the main act comes on. We just have to tell some jokes and do some dancing until the Sandman come and get us. But the Phil was an interesting place. I helped raise money to get the.
Yeah, you know all the dynamics before I got there, right?
Yeah, I negotiated the scoreboard from Pepsi.
Right.
So they had an exclusive with that, and also even with the catering in the cafeteria. So Pepsi used to do a lot, and I used to have a little account. Then they took that, I lived through 5 presidents, but after each gap, they would come at me until the new president would come. Right. I had to duck and dodge, do the alley shuffle until the new president came in, because that's, if I reported to the president, there was no president. What's your goal here?
So was there a lot of politics and stuff that went on to create the field?
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff, even though there's no longer a field, as you know.
Right.
But it was really, the college wanted to begin to use the field after all of the stuff, the fundraising and everything to get the field together. There were 2 issues. One, the community wanted to use the field because a lot of the funds came from public financing the state and the city.
Right.
And what I was trying to explain is that you're taking money from, elected officials who represent a certain community within this district, this community board 9, and anyway. And so it took a minute for them to understand that you can't keep getting this money and not letting the people from the community utilize the field.
Right.
And that was going for a minute. I think that may be why they probably hired you. They figured they wanted the face, but they didn't know who they were getting.
No.
They weren't getting the plantation.
They found out 23 years later.
They went deep into the field.
Right.
Which is why it was great. And then the politics came about. Hey, Jerry, you back?
Yeah, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Good. Talk, brother. We've been waiting for you. We've been dancing. Talk to about who you are, Jerry.
I'm Jerry Guyden. I was raised in segregation. My original dreams were to be a quarterback in the NFL, but they weren't having black quarterbacks in the 60s and 70s. I integrated myself into North Texas State, one of the few schools in Texas that accepted black applicants in 1970. I was told that I couldn't play quarterback, so it just made me a better student. I finished North Texas. I wanted to go to medical school, but also there was a block there. The professor who was over the pre-med program told me that I wasn't smart enough to go to medical school. So I had 2 blocks, but luckily I got accepted in the University of California, Berkeley. At that time was the #1 school in the country. So kind of gave me a feeling that I had something going. At Berkeley, I got a PhD. I worked with some of the most famous and top-notch people in all of science. Leon Wofsy, Steve Martin came up with the oncogene theory, and Jim Allison came up with the idea of immunotherapy for cancer. All of the new stuff for cancer, Jim Allison came with. But when I had choices to go to several places, some of the big muckety-muck places for my career, but because of my past, I wanted to train people who looked like me so that they would never feel the way that I felt about anything as far as their professions were concerned. As far as I was concerned, I was going to train as many doctors and scientists as I could who looked like me. So I accepted a job at City College of New York. My postdoctoral mentor, Leon Wofsy, finished City College. He told me what a wonderful place it was. At first, I didn't understand. And until you get to City College, you really don't understand what that means.
Right.
City College trains all of the people of New York. And a lot of people don't understand that there's a lot of talent in the poor neighborhood. When you go to City College, you meet some of the brightest young people in the world. I'm talking, period. Just one of my students made the highest score on the GRE the year that he finished. One of my students was valedictorian. There are a number of talented students that I came in contact. My idea was to train and give opportunity to as many people who look like me or people of color and white people. It didn't matter, but to produce a lab where there was no stress as far as what you look like or where you came from. Everybody had equal footing, and because we had an environment where the competition was not a competition where it was cutthroat, everybody kind of helped everybody. So it was a bootstrap type of thing. When you came into the lab, because a lot of the people were doing well, everybody wanted to do well. So we trained 60 people. Rahman used to send me students, and one of the students came and said, Dr. Rahman said, Jerry Guyden trying to train every black person that he can to get an MD. So Kevin and I really worked together, and I sent some students to him as well to try to find a student's niche, to try to get them where they wanted to be. Kevin really, I guess we both really loved the students. And it's difficult to be a faculty at City College with all of the responsibilities that you have. Teach, do research, be on committees and all of those things. But I think Kevin and I always put our students first. There was a lot of tension in my department because if you didn't do research, you weren't going to be successful. But because I wanted so much to train students, I put my students first, and my research was pretty good too. So the book is about the students that I trained, where they came from, and they came from a lot of different places, most with meager financial backgrounds. And now all of them have either an MD or a PhD, and 2 or 3 of them have an MD and PhD. There was one young lady who I think you talked to recently, Tony.
The lawyer.
Yeah, is a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
So my success, I think, is in the future with my students. I published a bunch of papers, and you know, those papers are old. People don't really remember the papers, but they'll remember my students. So that's what the book is about. How we set up a lab so that everybody was welcome and everybody had a chance to shoot for the stars.
And what were some of the experiments of note that came out of the lab research that you were doing at City College?
Tell them about the black mice, Jerry. Help me.
besides cloning mice. Mice. I didn't know that City College. I thought Columbia had to handle on all of this cloning stuff. You know, people wouldn't want to go to
Well,
sleep around the Columbia facility. They thought they might get snatched.
well, when I got there, there was not a lot of extramural um, research going on. We were able to get a big grant from the NIH called the RCMI, which allowed us to bring in all of the cutting edge machinery and core facilities for faculty to share in order to compete with the world as far as cell and molecular biology was concerned. My particular research was in immunology, and I wanted to study how T cells are the cells that are infected by the HIV virus. I wanted to understand how they developed. And I found a very unique system within the thymus. The thymus is right above the heart and right under the ribs. And that's the place where T cells develop into T cells. So my studies were to try to figure out how cells that come from the bone marrow end up becoming T cells. There was a very interesting cell in the thymus called the thymic nerve cell, where it's as many as 100 developing T cells are inside of the cytoplasmic membrane of this one cell. So that was the basis of my my research. The details very difficult to talk about because the terminology is like learning German or Russian or something. But basically, my research was a study of the immune system.
Mm-hmm. Which is an important thing. And your PhD focused on cancer, was it?
Yeah, I got a PhD studying cancer. Back in the day, in the 70s, my mentor found most people thought that cancer was a function of your interactions with the environment, carcinogens, chemicals interacting with the DNA, and they thought that was a nucleating event. That is the nucleating event. But what happens is that event has to happen in certain spots on the DNA. And what it does, if in fact you hit an active site, it causes genes within your cells, within your body, to become to stop working and to cause the cell to grow. So the initiation of cancer is to activate these things called oncogenes to start pumping out the machinery for the cell to divide. And my mentor was the guy who came up with this idea, G. Stephen Martin, probably one of the brightest people I've ever met. So what we did was to go around looking in the cells for these things called oncogenes. So we found a lot of cells, depending on the cell type, a lot of genes, depending on the cell type, that activated that cell type to become cancerous. And that was the beginning of modern cancer research.
Which is very interesting. I was reading at one point a lot of the things that we call normal now in the future, based on new technologies, will, people will look back and say, "Damn, they did that." Just as we look back 100 years ago and say, "Damn, you were cutting people and you were doing all of that." In the future, there won't be any more surgeries. There's all of this stuff will basically be, done using technology that is on the market now. But it's interesting as we talk about things like cancer and things like that. Although cancer has made a lot of people a lot of money, so even if you had a cure for cancer, Dr. Ben Sankey said he had a cure, and you don't. He's not around, so sometimes you can't always understand what is and what is not. But again, at City College, go ahead.
Let me give you a story that says something about Kevin and I, because Kevin has the same type of story. One of my students, who's now a neurosurgeon, actually he's a cancer surgeon that works um,
I think he might have
He
froze
froze.
up again. It may be the connection that he has.
You know he down south, so you know what happens to us down south. They freeze us.
Oh man, we don't want to.
Although Malcolm said, as long as you south of the Canadian border, you south.
But yeah, we have to talk to him. He has to, we had to move back up north if you want to get some good cable and internet services.
But Jerry, I mean, when he talked, I just call him sometimes just to talk about science. Science is so amazing, you know what I mean? Because the vastness of it is just, one thing you think one thing, and then here's and then it's so evolving every few years or whatever. Certain research becomes obsolete because something new came down the pipe. You know what I mean?
I mean, and now what is fascinating to me, and to a point scary, I just wrote an article about it, is AI. I mean, when you start digging into that rabbit hole, there's just about anything that you want to do. Right. You can go to AI and figure out how to do it. And I mean, from experiments to papers to marketing to law to real, it's. I'm not sure where people are going to be, but
I watched that episode on 60 Minutes a couple of weeks, and I was scared. I mean,
man.
Scared,
at this point, there are ways for your mind. There's an AI component that can help read your mind. So
you back?
You're back?
Yeah, I'm back. If I go out, Kevin, I'm going to tell the story about Vincent. So finish the story.
All right.
Vincent was one of my students who came into the lab. He worked for a little while, and then I caught him sleeping on the flat bench freezer. The first night, I didn't think anything of it because experiments can run overnight. But the very next day, in the morning, I opened the lab. He was sleeping on the freezer again. So I told him to come into my office. And after a long conversation, he was unwilling to tell me what was going on. But finally, he told me that his father had thrown him out of the house. And he was homeless. And he had been homeless for about a month. So that was a difficult situation for me, but even more difficult situation for Vincent. And Vincent was the 4.0 student. So I made a decision after I asked my wife to bring him home. So Vincent lived with us for about 8 months. It was a wonderful thing for me and my kids and my wife to have Vincent in the house. The reason was Vincent has a Jamaican background. And my kids really need to understand that there were other people, Black people, who were the same but different, and also didn't have all of the things that they had as an African American young person. Vincent went on and finished. He went to medical school at Cincinnati, did a great residence at Sloan Kettering. He's now chief of surgery in Cedar Rapids. A wonderful, wonderful story. He's now my adopted son. And I have several of those stories where these young people come from nowhere, from places where you would not think that they had not the ability, the pathway to success. And just because they came to the right place, they all have been successful. And Rahman has done a lot of that. A lot of young people just walk into his office and he starts talking to them and just points them in the right direction. And I think that's our story. And we talk about it all the time when we were there together, how we can help each other, help other people.
Jerry, you talk about people like Vincent, and you know, it's a number of them. And one of the things I always used to say to myself, you know, you did 10 years in the penitentiary, but for the whole 10 years, you had 3 hots in a cot. You know what I mean? And it's people, you know, that, I mean, I'm in the penitentiary and had more than what a lot of people have. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah. No.
Well, one of the things that I'm happy to have had the opportunity to in some cases ride interference to try to keep.
Yes.
In my case in particular.
Yeah, I had to do a lot. I had to do a little bit more with Kevin. I do a bit. I had to pull him in my office a couple of times and say, "Hey, man, be careful where you go in there."
On some occasions, the leak. I mean, he had to pull me in and say, "Put that Philly back in your pocket."
But
but Tony's saved a whole lot of careers.
Yeah.
Tony found out before I did I was in trouble. So called me in on the way to work. Say, hey, don't go to your office. Come to my office. And without there were people who were trying to take the money. And Tony knew it before I did.
Right.
And we set it all straight. I really appreciate Tony. Just a good brother, man. Just taking care
one
of
of the interesting things is that, you know, my office, I guess, was a place where whether you were custodians or whoever, you could come in and at least I would listen. But what the feedback was is that a lot of the people who were professors, they saw the people who cleaned as being invisible. So people would be talking about all of their stuff. And people come back and says, you know, I was in this office cleaning blah, blah, blah. And they said this. So I would be able to find out a lot of stuff just because these guys and women, you know, just didn't look at them as being people that meant anything.
The spook who sat by the door.
Right.
Yeah.
You know? So even when they were coming at me, even with the field, you know, when I found out a lot of the stuff that was going on with the field. But the bottom line, and the reason why I'm glad to have had you guys, it just talks to how if we stick together, if we find a common bond amongst ourselves, with you two guys, I can't think of how many lives you've been able to change over the course of the time that you were at the City College of New York. You know, and Jerry, the story, that's why your book is an interesting one, because there are a lot of those stories there about, you know, again, going from homeless to a very distinguished physician. But those stories are interesting to be told. And that's why I am happy to have had both of you, because we have an opportunity here at Soul City to create our own narrative. And people like you, Kevin, and you, Jerry, people should know about because of the things that you've been able to do, the things that you've been able to accomplish. And that's why the Black media, whether it's in Philly or wherever, should always be supported and should always be held accountable to make sure that you're getting our story across in a way that it should be received. And I'd like to thank both of you for the many years of working together at the City College of New York, plus the things that you were able to do in your accomplishments. So again, with Dr. Jerry Guyden, his book, A Perfect Science, is one that gives a little framework on some of the students that he was able to work with, and where they were then and where they are now. And Dr. Kevin Abdul-Rahman, his second book, his first book was The Story, which was really interesting. It was both of these probably could be movies, man. The way things happen in your life, and some of these sitcoms, you were talking about the real deal, not just something that somebody was making up. But you are correct. Just because you did do something, but that's only in certain categories. There are certain people, in other ilks, in other race, they can do whatever they want to do, but it's what happens today. But for us, there's an excuse that people look for,
Right.
in order to do whether you did something or not. But if I can find an excuse, that's over even more.
Well, it's a part about capitalism too, because if we label you something, and now you can't compete because we took you out of the competition. So if 5 people were applying for the same job with the same credentials, you don't even get an interview now because you got hit. 2 of you got a background that we can label you with. You follow what I'm saying? So now that gives the opportunity for only 3, and of course you know what those 3 look like.
Well, again, I'm happy that you guys were able to do what you do and still do what you're doing. And Jerry, how can people get to your book? Is there a website or?
Yeah, let me say first, there are 3 other people who helped with the book, 2 co-authors, Dr. Vincent Reed and Dr. Michael Sams. And then we had contributions from Alex Acevedo. And Alex is putting up a website, so soon just look for A Perfect Science, Former Black Quarterback's Gift to Humanity online. But right now, that's the only, you can call me if you really have something urgent.
What number would they use?
I really don't want to put my number online, but
okay. Well,
email me at jerryguyden@gmail. Let's do it that way.
Okay. Say it again.
jerryguyden@gmail.com.
Okay. And the site, when it comes up, it will be A Perfect Science.
A Perfect Science, yes.
Mm-hmm. Kevin, how can people reach you?
Well, my book is on Amazon. My book is on Barnes and Noble and most of the platforms that you can go directly to. You just put The Eruption of Possible by Dr. Kevin Abdul-Rahman and it'll come up.
Well, again,
it's $15.95.
Thank you both for being on the show. There's a lot of stuff that I know we couldn't cover on the air, but nevertheless, I'm glad to have had you guys and looking forward to seeing you at some point.
Thank you, Tony.
I did see Kevin recently because one of our good colleagues retired, so I was able to.
Jerry, I went to Wendy's retirement, Jerry.
Yeah, you remember Wendy, but
I think.
But anyway,
you saw Christine.
I have to go, and don't be a stranger. Maybe there may be some other things we can do to help promote what you guys are doing. And now that we have been in contact, let's keep in contact, okay?
All right, then.
Take care.
Tony, I really appreciate this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Bye-bye. Tony.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Take care.
All right, y'all be safe. I'll talk to you next week, Jerry.
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Again, some of the people who have made a tremendous difference in a number of people, the lives of a number of people. And Jerry is a very unique person, one so much as to actually adopting a student, bringing him home. And he could have left that person uh, at the college doing what that person was doing and never have accomplished the things that that person was able to accomplish. So, again, two wonderful guys. Thank you for tuning in and listening to some of the things that we're talking about. And hopefully you'll pick up their books. We will again be back, God willing, next week and with a new show. As always, I'd like to thank the Soul City crew for giving us this platform in order to create our own narrative. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, the Art of War, signing off. Thank you and have a good day.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.